I never thought I would hand my husband divorce papers during what was supposed to be our vow renewal ceremony. But that's exactly what happened when his assistant stood up and announced she was carrying his child. It's strange how your entire life can implode in a matter of seconds, leaving you to make split-second decisions you never prepared for. I can still hear the collective gasp from our guests, feel the floor dropping beneath me, and see the look of horror on my husband's face. Not at being caught, but at being exposed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elaine Westbrook, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I was married to Gregory Westbrook, a rising investment banker who had just made partner at Harrington and Price, one of Lakeside Harbor's most prestigious firms. We lived in a beautiful colonial home in the affluent Oakwood neighborhood with our 2 children, Lily and Ben, ages 13 and 10. After 15 years of marriage, we had built what I believed was an unshakable foundation. Greg had been my college sweetheart. We met during sophomore year when he literally bumped into me at the campus library, causing me to drop an armful of books on his foot. It was the kind of meet cute that made for perfect anniversary toasts. I had put my own career as an interior designer on hold when Lily was born, shifting to occasional freelance projects while I focused on raising our family. It wasn't always easy, but it felt like a partnership. Greg worked long hours, but he always made time for family dinners on Sundays and never missed the children's important events. I managed our home life, supported his career, hosted the firm's holiday parties, and created the warm, loving environment we all thrived in. Or so I thought. The idea for a vow renewal ceremony came from Greg. We were approaching our 15th wedding anniversary, and he suggested we celebrate by reaffirming our commitment to each other. 15 years is a milestone worth celebrating, Ellie, he said one evening as we sat on our back porch, sharing a bottle of wine after the kids had gone to bed. Let's do something special. Let's remind ourselves and everyone we love why we chose each other. I was touched by his sentimentality. It wasn't something Greg showed often. He was more practical than romantic, which made this suggestion all the more meaningful. I threw myself into the planning with enthusiasm, booking the Lakeside Pavilion, a stunning glass-walled venue overlooking the harbor. I carefully selected flowers that matched our original wedding colors, found a caterer who could recreate our wedding menu with a modern twist, and even tracked down our original photographer. "You're going all out," my sister Catherine remarked, when I showed her my plans. "It's almost like planning a second wedding." "Greg deserves it," I replied confidently. "We deserve it. 15 years isn't easy, and I want to celebrate that we made it this far, still strong, still in love." Catherine gave me an odd look but quickly smiled. "Of course. It's going to be beautiful." In hindsight, I should have paid more attention to that momentary hesitation in her eyes. 3 weeks before the ceremony, I was at Greg's office to meet him for lunch, something we tried to do at least once a month. I arrived early and decided to surprise him. As I approached his office, I noticed his assistant, Vanessa Hill, wasn't at her desk. Vanessa had joined the firm about 2 years ago, a brilliant MBA graduate with sharp instincts for investment banking and a work ethic that matched Greg's. He often praised her dedication, sometimes joking that she would probably take his job one day. I thought nothing of her absence as I approached Greg's door, which was slightly ajar. Just as I was about to knock, I heard Vanessa's voice from inside. "We need to talk about what happens after the baby comes," she was saying, her voice low but clear. "I can't keep this secret much longer, Greg. I'm already showing." I froze, my hand suspended mid-air. I know, Greg replied, his voice tired and strained in a way I'd never heard before. "Just give me until after this vow renewal thing. Ellie's put so much work into it and the kids are excited. Once it's over, I'll figure out how to tell her about us." The world tilted sideways as I stood there, perfectly still, barely breathing. I couldn't see them. Just a sliver of Greg's desk was visible through the crack in the door, but their words painted a picture that shattered the image of my life into 1,000 jagged pieces. "And what exactly will you tell her?" Vanessa asked. "That we've been together for over a year? That we're having a baby? That you're leaving her?" I waited for Greg to deny it, to say this was some kind of misunderstanding, that Vanessa had misinterpreted something between them. Instead, I heard him sigh. "Yes, all of it. But not yet. Please, Van, just a few more weeks." My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I backed away from the door as quietly as possible. I turned and walked robotically to the elevator, pressed the button, and stepped inside, my movements mechanical. Only when the doors closed did I allow myself to breathe, and with that breath came the first wave of pain so intense I had to grab the railing to keep from collapsing. Somehow I made it to my car. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring unseeing at the dashboard as text messages from Greg rolled in. "Where are you? Thought we were meeting for lunch." And later, everything. "Okay, call me when you can." I didn't call. I couldn't speak to him, not yet. Not until I figured out what to do with this knowledge that had cleaved my life in two, before and after. My husband of 15 years, the father of my children, had been having an affair with his assistant. She was pregnant with his child, and they had been planning their future together, right under my nose, all while I'd been excitedly planning our vow renewal ceremony. The irony was almost too cruel to bear. That evening, I went through the motions of normal family life with an eerie calm that scared even me. I prepared dinner, helped Ben with his science project, listened to Lily talk about her volleyball practice. Greg came home at his usual time, kissed my cheek, and asked if I was feeling all right. "You never showed for lunch," he said, concern in his eyes I now realized were practiced in deception. I was worried. "I had a migraine," I lied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Came out of nowhere. I should have texted. Sorry." He accepted this without question, and as we sat at the dinner table, the four of us, our perfect family tableau, I studied him. How long had he been living this double life? How many times had he come home to us after being with her? How had I missed the signs? That night, after Greg fell asleep, I slipped out of bed and went to his home office. I had never been the type to snoop, had always respected his privacy, but those boundaries seemed irrelevant now. His phone was charging on his desk, and for the first time in our marriage, I picked it up and entered his passcode, our anniversary date, ironically. What I found confirmed everything. Hundreds of text messages between him and Vanessa, dating back nearly 2 years. Photos I could barely look at. Plans for trips they had taken together under the guise of business travel. And more recently, discussions about the baby, about their future together, about how and when to tell me. I felt sick, but beyond the nausea and heartbreak was a growing anger, a sense of betrayal so profound it burned through my shock. I had given this man 15 years of my life. I had put my career on hold to raise our family. I had supported his ambitions, celebrated his successes, stood by him through failures. I had loved him completely, trusted him absolutely. And all the while, he had been building a separate life with someone else. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Instead, I would take control of the narrative that had been happening behind my back. The next morning, I called Catherine. "I need your help," I said when she answered, my voice steadier than I expected. "And I need your discretion." "Ellie? What's wrong?" The concern in her voice nearly broke my composure. "Greg's been having an affair with his assistant. She's pregnant." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. She wasn't surprised. "You knew," I said flatly. Catherine sighed. "I suspected. Tyler saw them together at a restaurant in Westfield a few months ago. They looked intimate. He wasn't sure what to do, whether he should tell you or confront. Greg first. We've been arguing about it ever since." Tyler was Catherine's husband, Greg's friend since college. The knowledge that they had discussed my husband's infidelity, had debated whether to tell me as if it were a hypothetical ethical dilemma rather than my actual life, sent a fresh wave of anger through me. "I see," I said, my voice cold. "Well, now I know. And I need a good divorce lawyer. The best." "Ellie," Catherine began, her voice cautious, "maybe you should think about this. Talk to Greg first. Consider counseling. His assistant is pregnant." "With his child, Kath," I interrupted. "There's nothing to discuss, nothing to salvage. I just need to be smart about what comes next." After a pause, she said, "I know someone. Margaret Chen. She handled Diane's divorce last year. Diane got everything she asked for." "Set up a meeting," I said. "Today, if possible." By the time I met with Margaret Chen that afternoon, the shock had hardened into resolve. I sat in her elegantly appointed office and laid out what I knew. "I want to be strategic about this," I told her. "I don't want a messy, drawn-out battle. I want a clean break, but I want what's fair after 15 years of marriage." Margaret, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with an air of formidable competence, nodded. "When do you plan to confront your husband?" I smiled thinly. "During our vow renewal ceremony." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "That's unconventional. So is having an affair with your assistant and getting her pregnant while planning to renew your vows with your wife," I replied. A hint of approval flashed in her eyes. "Fair point, but I have to advise against public confrontations. They may feel satisfying in the moment, but they rarely serve your long-term interests in a divorce proceeding." "I understand," I said, "but I'm not planning a scene. I just want to take back some of the power he's taken from me. He's been writing this story behind my back for 2 years. Now I'm going to finish it. Publicly, yes, but with dignity." We spent the next 2 hours discussing strategy, with Margaret documenting everything I knew about our finances. Greg had always handled the investments, but I had kept myself informed. I knew about his partnership stake in the firm, our retirement accounts, the vacation property in Maine, the stock portfolio. I also knew that Lakeside Harbor was a community, property state, giving me rights to half of everything we had built together. "Have you considered what you'll do about the children?" Margaret asked carefully. The question pierced through my strategic focus, reminding me of the collateral damage in this disaster. Lily and Ben, who adored their father, whose world was about to be upended. "I want primary custody," I said, firmly. "But I won't keep them from him. They love him, and despite everything, he's been a good father." My voice caught slightly. "I just don't know how to tell them." "One step at a time," Margaret advised gently. "Let's focus on preparing your case, gathering documentation, and securing your financial position. Children are resilient, more than we give them credit for. With the right support, they'll adjust." Over the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life of my own. On the surface, I continued preparations for the vow renewal, met with the florist, confirmed details with the venue, ordered a new dress, a simple but elegant ivory sheath that cost more than I would normally spend. I helped the kids with homework, cooked dinners, smiled at Greg when he came home, and pretended everything was normal. Behind the scenes, I worked with Margaret to document our assets, opened separate bank accounts, secured copies of all our important financial records, and prepared for what would come after. I also met with a therapist, knowing I would need professional support to navigate not just my own emotions, but also helping my children through the aftermath. Most painfully, I began to watch Greg and Vanessa more carefully. Now that I knew what to look for, their affair was embarrassingly obvious. The lingering glances when they thought no one was watching, the inside jokes. The way Vanessa's hand would briefly touch Greg's arm during firm events, a gesture casual enough to seem innocent, but intimate enough to betray their connection. And yes, Vanessa was indeed showing. She had taken to wearing looser clothing, but the gentle curve of her belly was unmistakable once you knew to look for it. I wondered how many others at the firm had noticed, had quietly connected the dots while I remained oblivious. The night before our vow renewal ceremony, Greg and I sat on our back porch, just as we had when he first suggested this renewal. He seemed tense, distracted. "Nervous about tomorrow?" I asked, my voice light even as my heart hammered in my chest. He looked startled. "What?" "No, just some work stress." "Everything will be perfect," I assured him, the irony of my words not lost on me. "I've taken care of every detail." "You always do," he said, reaching for my hand and squeezing it. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Ellie." It took everything in me not to snatch my hand away, not to scream the truth at him there and then. Instead, I smiled and replied, "Fortunately, you'll never have to find out." The lie hung between us in the warm evening air, its weight crushing me. But I held firm. Just one more day of pretense, and then never again. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, a perfect late spring day. Our backyard, transformed with white chairs, an arch covered in flowers, and twinkling, lights strung through the trees, looked like something from a fairy tale. Catherine arrived early to help me get ready, her eyes anxious as she watched me apply my makeup with steady hands. "Are you sure about this?" she asked for the 100th time. "More sure than I've ever been about anything," I replied, smoothing the ivory fabric of my dress. "I've spent 15 years building a life with a man who could lie to my face every day. I won't spend another minute doing it." The guests began arriving at noon. Close friends, family members, colleagues from Greg's firm, including, yes, Vanessa, wearing a flowing maxi dress that almost, but not quite, concealed her pregnancy. She had the audacity to smile at me, to compliment the beautiful setup. I thanked her with ice in my voice, watching confusion flicker across her face at my coldness. Greg stood under the flower arch, handsome in his navy suit, smiling as I walked toward him. Our children sat in the front row, Lily looking grown up in her first formal dress, Ben fidgeting with his tie but beaming with pride. They believed. They were witnessing their parents recommit to a lifetime of love. The thought nearly broke my resolve. But then I remembered what was really happening, what had been happening for years while I remained blind to it, and my determination returned tenfold. The ceremony began. The officiant, a family friend, spoke about enduring love, about honesty, and commitment, each word a fresh cut to my heart. Greg and I had written our own renewal vows, and he went first, his voice steady as he promised continued fidelity, respect, and partnership, promises he had already broken 1,000 times. When it was my turn, I reached into a small pocket hidden in the seam of my dress and pulled out not the vows I had written, but the divorce papers Margaret had prepared. "Greg," I began, my voice clear and carrying across our suddenly silent backyard. I had written vows about trust and honesty, about the life we've built and the future ahead of us. But I think these speak more truly to where we stand today. I handed him the papers, watching confusion, then shock, then horror spread across his face as he realized what he was holding. "What is this?" he whispered, his face draining of color. "Ellie, what are you doing?" I'm doing what you've been planning to do, I replied, raising my voice slightly so everyone could hear. I'm ending our marriage. The difference is I'm doing it honestly, directly, without 2 years of lies and betrayal behind it. A murmur ran through the gathered guests. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Vanessa's hand go protectively to her belly, saw the panic on her face. I know about the affair, I continued, keeping my voice steady, dignified. I know about the baby. I know about the plans you've been making while I've been planning this ceremony. Greg's face contorted with a mixture of anger and fear. This isn't the place. It's exactly the place. I cut him off. You chose to renew vows you've already broken. You brought your pregnant mistress to witness it. You made this charade public, so the ending should be public too. Gasps and whispers erupted around us. I saw Lily's confused face, Ben's wide eyes, and my heart constricted. This wasn't how I wanted them to find out, but there was no going back now. The terms are fair, I continued, gesturing to the papers in his hands. Half of everything as the law provides. Primary custody of the children, with generous visitation for you. The house goes to me. Your investment portfolio remains yours. Clean, simple, and final. Greg's shock was giving way to anger. You can't do this. I already have, I said quietly. Your signature is all that's needed to avoid dragging this through the courts, to spare our children that additional pain. But make no mistake, Greg, whether you sign today or fight me, for months the outcome will be the same. Our marriage is over. I turned to face our guests, many of whom were watching in stunned silence, others whispering urgently to each other. Vanessa stood frozen, one hand still on her belly, the other covering her mouth. I apologize for the unexpected turn of events, I said, my voice steady. As you can see, today will not be a celebration of renewed vows after all. Instead, it marks the end of a chapter in my life and the beginning of a new one. Thank you for coming, but I think it's best if we conclude here. With that, I turned and walked back down the aisle alone, head high, the hushed whispers and shocked faces a blur around me. Catherine fell into step beside me as I reached the house, slipping her arm through mine in silent support. It wasn't, until we were inside, the door closed behind us, that my composure finally began to crack. My hands shook as I leaned against the wall, the enormity of what I had just done washing over me. The kids, I whispered, tears finally coming. Oh, God. Catherine, what have I done to the kids? What you had to do, she replied firmly, gripping my shoulders. This isn't your fault, Ellie. You didn't create this situation. You just refused to pretend anymore. Outside, I could hear raised voices, Greg's angry protests, guests calling out questions, the general chaos of a social event imploding. But in that moment, in the quiet of my house, soon to be just my house, I felt the first tentative sense of relief breaking through the pain. It was done. The truth was out, and while the road ahead would be difficult, filled with legal battles, emotional conversations with my children, and the painful process of rebuilding my life, I had taken the first step. I had chosen truth over comfortable, lies, dignity over silent suffering. As I waited for what would come next, for Greg to storm in demanding explanations, for my children to come seeking answers, I found myself standing a little straighter. The weight of deception, his and mine, was lifted. Whatever happened now, I would face it honestly, openly, on my own terms. And that, I realized, was its own kind of freedom. The next hour unfolded in a blur of motion and emotion. Greg burst. Through the front door, his face contorted with rage, divorce papers crumpled in his fist. He found me in the kitchen, where Catherine stood protectively at my side. What the hell was that? He demanded, his voice shaking. You couldn't have talked to me privately? You had to humiliate me in front of everyone we know? I met his gaze steadily, surprised by my own calm. The way you humiliated me by bringing your pregnant girlfriend to our vow renewal. Or the way you've been humiliating me for 2 years while carrying on behind my back. His jaw clenched. It's not what you think. Stop. I cut him off, raising my hand. Don't insult me with lies. I heard you and Vanessa in your office. I've seen the texts. I know everything, Greg. The fight seemed to drain from him suddenly, his shoulders sagging as he slumped against the kitchen island. How long have you known? 3 weeks, I replied. Since I came to your office for our lunch date and overheard you discussing your plans for after the baby comes. Understanding dawned on his face. That's why you didn't show up. You heard us. Yes? And then I did what any reasonable person would do. I investigated. Your phone wasn't exactly secure. I picked up my water glass, needing something to do with my trembling hands. 15 years, Greg. 15 years we've been married, and you've been cheating on me with your assistant for the past 2. Outside, I could hear the murmur of departing guests, car doors slamming, engines starting, our perfect celebration dispersing into shock and gossip. Where are the kids? Greg asked, looking around as if just remembering their existence. Catherine's husband took them to get ice cream, Catherine replied coldly. We thought they should be spared the immediate fallout. Greg ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly lost. This isn't how I wanted this to happen, he said quietly. A bitter laugh escaped me. And how exactly did you want it to happen? Were you planning to wait until after our vow renewal to tell me you were leaving me for your pregnant assistant? Was that the plan? He had the decency to look ashamed. I was going to tell you next week, after the ceremony. I didn't want to ruin my preparation. I finished for him. All my hard work planning the perfect ceremony. How thoughtful of you, Greg. Always considering my feelings. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Catherine went to answer it, returning moments later with Vanessa trailing behind her. My husband's assistant, his lover, the mother of his unborn child, stood awkwardly in my kitchen, her hand resting protectively on her slightly swollen belly. I think I should be part of this conversation, she said, her voice soft but determined. I stared at her, this woman who had been sleeping with my husband, who had calmly worked alongside him while he came home to me and our children each night. She was younger than me, of course, early 30s to my 41 years. Sleek dark hair, perfect makeup, designer clothes. Everything about her seemed calculated for success, including, apparently, seducing her married boss. By all means. I gestured to the breakfast nook. Have a seat at my table. You've already taken everything else. She flinched but sat down, folding her hands on the table. Greg moved to sit beside her, and the sight of them together, a united front in my home, made bile rise in my throat. I want you both out of my house, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Greg, you can stay at a hotel until you find somewhere permanent. You can come back tomorrow when I'm out with the kids to pack some clothes and essentials. But right now, I need you to leave. Ellie, we need to talk about this, Greg insisted. About the children, about the terms of the divorce. The terms are in the papers, I replied coldly. They're fair. More than fair considering what you've done. And as for the children, we'll need to talk to them together, but not today. Not until I've had time to process this myself. Vanessa leaned forward, her expression earnest. Ellie, I know this is difficult, but I hope eventually we can find a way to be cordial. For the children's sake. All of the children. Her hand moved to her belly again, a gesture that sent fresh pain lancing through me. The audacity of this woman, sitting in my kitchen, suggesting we find a way to blend our families as if this were some modern Brady Bunch situation rather than a devastating betrayal, pushed me to the edge of my control. Get out, I said quietly. Both of you, get out of my house before I say something I'll regret. Greg hesitated, then stood. I'll call you tomorrow about the kids, he said, his voice subdued. And Ellie. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. The platitude was so inadequate, so hollow in the face of what he'd done, that I couldn't even respond. I simply turned away, staring out the kitchen window as they gathered their things and left. Only when I heard the front door close did I allow myself to exhale, a shuddering breath that seemed to come from the depths of my soul. Catherine approached cautiously. They're gone, she confirmed unnecessarily. Do you want me to stay? Part of me wanted to say yes, to cling to my sister's presence as a shield against the loneliness crashing over me. But a stronger part needed solitude, needed space to fall apart in private before I had to be strong for my children. No, I said, squeezing her hand gratefully. I need some time alone, but thank you for everything today. After Catherine left, I walked through my suddenly empty house, the remnants of the ceremony still visible through the windows. The white chairs arranged in neat rows, the flower arch standing forlorn in the late afternoon sun, the catering staff, quietly packing up food that would never be eaten at the celebration that never happened. I should have felt devastated, broken by the public collapse of my marriage and the revelation of my husband's betrayal. And part of me was. But beneath the pain was something else, something that surprised me with its intensity. Relief. The past 3 weeks of pretending, of smiling through my knowledge of Greg's betrayal while secretly preparing for today's confrontation, had been exhausting. The years before that, of unacknowledged distance growing between us, of doubts I'd pushed aside, of accommodations I'd made to keep our family functioning, suddenly revealed themselves as a different kind of exhaustion, one I hadn't even recognized until it was lifted. The sound of a car door slamming pulled me from my thoughts. Tyler, Catherine's husband, was back with the children. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and went to meet them, already crafting in my mind the gentle version of the truth I would share with them tonight. Not everything. They were too young for all the painful details, but enough to help them understand that our family was changing, that it wasn't their fault, and that both their father and I would always love them. It would be the first of many difficult conversations in the days and weeks ahead. But as I opened the door to my children's confused faces, I knew with absolute certainty that I had done the right thing. No more living with lies, no more pretending. Whatever came next would at least be honest. The following days passed in a haze of logistics and emotions. Telling Lily and Ben about the divorce was as painful as I'd anticipated. Lily, at 13, was old enough to suspect there was more to the story than I was sharing. Her perceptive eyes studying my face as I explained that her father and I had grown apart, that we'd been unhappy for some time, and that we'd decided it was better to live separately. But what about the vow renewal? She asked, her voice small. If you were unhappy, why were you going to renew your vows? I hesitated, weighing how much truth she could handle. Sometimes people try to fix problems by recommitting to each other, I said finally. But in our case, I realized it wouldn't. Solve the underlying issues. Is Dad going to live with Vanessa now? Ben asked suddenly, his 10-year-old face scrunched in confusion. I froze, caught off guard. Why would you ask that, honey? He shrugged, picking at a loose thread on his sleeve. I heard Mrs. Landon on the phone when Uncle Tyler was buying us ice cream. She said Dad got Vanessa pregnant and that's why you were getting divorced. Anger flashed through me, at Greg, at Vanessa, at the gossiping parents who couldn't control their conversations around children. But I pushed it down, focusing on my son's needs. Your father and Vanessa have become very close, I said carefully. And yes, they're going to have a baby together. That's part of why Dad and I are separating. But the important thing is that we both love you and Lily very much, and that won't ever change. So we'll have a half-sibling? Lily asked, her analytical mind already processing the implications. Yes, I confirmed. But that doesn't change who you are to each other, or to us. The conversation continued, winding through their fears and questions, my heart breaking at their confusion even as I admired their resilience. By the time we finished talking, both children seemed, if not accepting, at least understanding of the basic situation. They were sad, but not devastated, worried but not terrified. It was the best I could hope for under the circumstances. That night. After they were in bed, I called Margaret Chen to update her on the situation. "He hasn't signed the papers yet," I told her, keeping my voice low despite being alone in my bedroom. "But he didn't reject them outright either." "That's actually a good sign," Margaret replied. "In my experience, the theatrical approach often shocks them into compliance, especially when they know they're in the wrong. Give it a few days. Let him consult with his own attorney. If he's smart, they'll advise him the terms are fair under the circumstances." I sighed, sinking onto the edge of my bed. "And if he's not smart?" "Then we prepare for battle," she said simply. "But from what? You've told me about the situation. He has every incentive to keep this quiet and clean. A messy public divorce with his assistant's pregnancy as a central issue won't look good for a partner at an investment firm." She was right, of course. Greg had built his career on a reputation for sound judgment and integrity. A protracted divorce battle that publicly aired his affair with a subordinate would damage that reputation, potentially affecting his standing at the firm and with clients. It was a leverage point I hadn't planned to use directly, but its existence worked in my favor. 3 days after the ceremony, Greg called to arrange picking up more of his things. I made sure to be out of the house with the children, leaving him to pack alone. When we returned, his closet was half empty, his toiletries gone from the bathroom, his desk cleared of personal items. The physical evidence of his departure hit me harder than I expected, the emptiness of spaces once filled, with his presence a stark reminder of how thoroughly my life had changed. That night he called again, asking to speak with the children. I put them on speakerphone, listening as he awkwardly attempted normalcy, asking about their days, promising to see them soon, avoiding any mention of the situation. When they handed the phone back to me, his tone changed, becoming more serious. "I've looked over the papers," he said without preamble. "My lawyer thinks I could fight for a better deal, especially regarding the house." "You could," I agreed evenly, "and I could push for a larger share of your partnership stake in the firm, given the circumstances of our separation. I could also make things very uncomfortable for you professionally, but I don't think either of us wants a drawn-out legal battle." Silence stretched between us, the implicit threat hanging in the air. "I'll sign them," he said finally, "but I want adjustments to the visitation schedule. The weekends you've proposed don't work with my calendar." It was a small concession, one I could easily make without compromising the core terms. "Have your lawyer send over the proposed changes. If they're reasonable, I'll approve them." "Thank you," he said, sounding relieved. "And Ellie, for what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for how things ended, but for how they began with Vanessa. I never planned for any of this to happen." The apology, so inadequate in the face of his betrayal, sparked a fresh wave of anger. "Things didn't just happen, Greg. You made choices. Every day for 2 years, you chose to lie to me, to betray our marriage, to build a relationship with another woman while coming home to me and our children. So spare me the passive language. You did this. You. Not circumstances, not fate, not an accident of timing. You." He was quiet for a moment. "You're right," he admitted finally. "I made choices, bad ones, selfish ones. I can't undo them. All I can do now is try to minimize the damage to the kids." "On that at least we agree," I said, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. "Good night, Greg." As I hung up, I realized it was the most honest exchange we'd had in years, possibly in our entire marriage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Only in its dissolution had our relationship finally achieved the authenticity I'd always thought we shared. The following week brought its own challenges. Word of our dramatic separation had spread through our social circle, resulting in an awkward dance of friends and acquaintances unsure how to react. Some reached out immediately with offers of support and expressions of shock. Others maintained a conspicuous silence, either unsure which side to take, or embarrassed by their knowledge of gossip they hadn't shared with me. My closest friend, Rachel, appeared on my doorstep the day after the ceremony with a bottle of wine and an overnight bag. "I'm staying tonight," she announced, brushing past me into the foyer. "No arguments. You shouldn't be alone right now." I hadn't realized how much I needed her presence until she was there, pouring wine in my kitchen, ordering dinner for us, creating a space where I could finally break down. And break down I did, the carefully maintained composure of the past weeks crumbling as I sobbed in her arms, releasing the pain and rage and humiliation I'd been holding at bay. "I can't believe he did this," I cried, the wine making my emotions flow more freely. 15 years, Rachel, 2 children, and he throws it all away for a younger woman, the most cliché midlife crisis imaginable. Rachel stroked my hair, letting me vent without interruption. Only when my tears subsided did she offer her perspective. "You know what amazes me?" she said, refilling our glasses. "Not that Greg cheated. Men cheat all the time, unfortunately. But how you handled it. Most women would have confronted him immediately, thrown his things on the lawn, made a scene, in private. But you took your time, made a plan, consulted a lawyer, and then delivered the most epic public comeuppance I've ever heard of. You're my hero, Ellie." I laughed despite myself, wiping away tears. It wasn't about revenge. Well, not entirely. It was about taking back control of the narrative. He was planning to blindside me after the ceremony, to tell me he was leaving, for his pregnant assistant. After I'd spent weeks planning this elaborate recommitment to our marriage, I couldn't let him dictate the terms of our ending. Rachel nodded approvingly. "And now the firm knows, his friends know, everyone knows that he wasn't just leaving you, he was actively cheating with a subordinate while planning a vow renewal. That takes a special kind of duplicity." "His boss called me yesterday," I revealed, surprising myself with the disclosure. "Richard Harrington himself. He wanted to express his concern and check on me." Rachel's eyes widened. "Really? What did he say?" "He was very careful with his words, but reading between the lines, I think the firm is doing damage control. He emphasized that relationships between supervisors and their direct reports are strongly discouraged, which I took to mean Vanessa will be reassigned or asked to leave." "Good," Rachel said firmly. "Actions have consequences." I sighed, swirling the wine in my glass. I don't even care about that part anymore. Let them be together. Let them have their baby and their life. I just want to get through this divorce as quickly and cleanly as possible for the kids' sake. "And for your sake," Rachel reminded me gently. "You deserve to move forward, Ellie. To start fresh without his betrayal hanging over you." The concept of starting fresh seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. For 15 years, my identity had been intertwined with Greg's, as his wife, as the mother of his children, as the supportive partner to his ambitious career. Who was I without those definitions? What did I want from the next chapter of my life? The questions kept me awake long after Rachel had fallen asleep in my guest room. Lying in my too-empty bed, I scrolled through my phone, finding myself on the website for the local community college. Before marriage and children, I'd been working toward a degree in interior design. I'd kept my hand in with occasional freelance projects over the years, but had never pursued it seriously after Lily was born. On impulse, I clicked on their continuing education catalog, browsing the design courses offered for the upcoming fall semester. A certificate program caught my eye: Advanced Residential Design, a 1-year program that would build on my existing skills and provide credentials that could help launch a more serious career. For the first time since discovering Greg's betrayal, I felt a flutter of excitement unrelated to anger or vindication. This was something for me, something I'd put aside but never stopped wanting. With Greg's financial support secured in the divorce agreement and the children old enough to be more independent, perhaps now was the time to reclaim that dream. I bookmarked the page, making a mental note to look into application deadlines tomorrow. It was a small step, hardly a life plan, but it was something positive to focus on, a direction to move in that had nothing to do with Greg or his betrayal. Sleep came easier after that, my mind spinning with possibilities rather than dwelling on losses. In my dreams, I redesigned spaces, not just rooms or houses, but my life itself, tearing down walls that no longer served, opening up to new light, new perspectives. I woke feeling more rested than I had in weeks, despite the emotional exhaustion of recent days. That morning, as I prepared breakfast for the children, my phone buzzed with a text from Greg. Papers signed and delivered to your lawyer. Visitation adjustments included as discussed. I stared at the message, a complex wave of emotions washing over me. Relief, certainly. The divorce would proceed without a fight, the terms I'd established largely intact, but also a strange sense of finality, of a door firmly closing on a chapter of my life I'd thought would continue indefinitely. "Mom, are you okay?" Lily asked, studying my face with her perceptive gaze as she entered the kitchen. I smiled, tucking my phone away. "Yes, sweetheart, actually I think I am." And to my surprise, it wasn't a lie. The road ahead would be challenging, co-parenting with Greg and inevitably Vanessa, rebuilding my professional identity, helping my children adjust to our new reality. But for the first time, I could see beyond the pain of betrayal to the possibility of a different kind of future. One I would shape on my own terms. As I poured cereal for Ben and helped Lily pack her lunch for school, I found myself making mental lists, calls to make, research to conduct, appointments to schedule. I would need to meet with Margaret again to review the signed papers. I wanted to look into the design program at the community college. I should schedule appointments with a financial advisor to ensure I manage the divorce settlement wisely. Each item on my mental list represented a step forward, away from the marriage that had defined me for 15 years, and toward whatever came next. It wouldn't be the life I'd planned, the one I'd believed in right up until 3 weeks ago. But it would be mine, built with intention rather than deception, and there was power in that knowledge, a power no one, not even Greg, could take away. When the kids were off to school and I had the house to myself, I opened my laptop and began researching the design program in earnest. The fall semester started in just 4 months. If I was going to do this, I needed to move quickly, to complete the application, gather my portfolio of freelance work, possibly take some prerequisite courses over the summer. As I typed out notes and bookmarked pages, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, too focused on my research to deal with likely spam. But something made me pick up. "Elaine Westbrook speaking," I answered, bracing for a sales pitch. "Mrs. Westbrook, this is Amanda Lowell," came a woman's voice. "I don't know if you remember me. I was at your event last weekend. I'm a friend of the Hartmans." I vaguely recalled her, a stylish woman in her 60s who had complimented my dress before the ceremony. "Yes, of course," I lied smoothly. "How can I help you, Mrs. Lowell?" "Call me Amanda, please," she said warmly. "I know this is unusual, but I was wondering if you might be available for coffee sometime this week. I have a proposition I'd like to discuss with you." Curiosity piqued. I checked my calendar. "I could do tomorrow afternoon, around 2. "Perfect," she replied. "Do you know the Bluebird Cafe on Maple Street? It's quiet enough for conversation." We confirmed the details and I hung up, puzzled but intrigued. What proposition could this virtual stranger have for me? Was it related to the divorce somehow? A potential client for freelance design work who had seen my home at the aborted ceremony? Whatever it was, it represented something I hadn't expected. An opportunity arising directly from what I'd assumed was the most humiliating moment of my life. Perhaps there was something to be said for public honesty after all, painful as it had been at the time. That evening, as I heated leftovers for dinner, my phone buzzed again with a text from Greg. "Kids this weekend still? Friday 6 to Sunday 6? I texted back a simple, "Yes," our communication already evolving into the terse, practical exchanges of divorced parents. It felt strange, this new relationship forming from the ashes of our marriage, but not as painful as I might have expected. There was clarity in our current interactions that had been missing for years, perhaps always. The doorbell rang as I was setting the table, and I frowned, not expecting visitors. Through the peephole, I saw Vanessa standing on my porch, alone, her expression anxious. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home. The last person I wanted to speak with was my husband's pregnant mistress, but curiosity and a certain perverse desire to face this head-on made me open the door. "Vanessa," I said coolly. "Greg isn't here." "I know," she replied quickly. "I came to see you." I raised an eyebrow but stepped back, allowing her into the foyer. I didn't invite her further into the house, maintaining the boundary of the entryway. "What can I do for you?" I asked, crossing my arms. She took a deep breath, visibly gathering courage. "I wanted to apologize, not for loving Greg. I can't apologize for that, but for how everything happened, for the deception, for the vow, renewal, for all of it. You deserved better." The apology caught me off guard. I'd expected excuses, perhaps hostility, not this awkward attempt at amends. "Why now?" I asked. "Why come here alone?" "Because I'm going to be in your children's lives," she replied simply. "And I don't want to start that relationship with this much hostility between us. I know we'll never be friends, Ellie. I'm not naive, but maybe we can find a way to be civil, for everyone's sake." I studied her, this woman who had inserted herself into the center of my family's destruction. She seemed sincere, her eyes meeting mine without flinching despite the discomfort evident in her posture. "Civil," I repeated. "That's a low bar, Vanessa." "It's where we have to start," she said quietly. "I know you hate me." "I don't hate you," I interrupted, surprising myself with the realization as I spoke. "I don't know you well enough to hate you. I'm angry, I'm hurt, but mostly I just want to move forward with my life. If that means finding a way to coexist for the children's sake, fine. But don't expect warm family gatherings or friendly catch-up calls." Relief washed over her face. "That's more than fair. Thank you for hearing me out." As she turned to leave, a question that had been lurking in my mind for weeks suddenly surfaced. "Vanessa," I called after her, "did you know about the vow renewal before he planned it? Were you part of that decision?" She paused, her back to me, then slowly turned around. "No," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found out after he'd already suggested it to you. I was horrified, Ellie. I told him it was cruel, that he needed to tell you the truth before going through with it. But he insisted it would be easier this way, that he didn't want to hurt you before the ceremony you were so excited about." The confirmation of Greg's capacity for deception, even with his lover, wasn't surprising, but it was illuminating. The man I'd been married to for 15 years was a stranger in many ways, capable of compartmentalizing his life, his relationships, his truths and lies in ways I hadn't fully comprehended. "Thank you for being honest," I said finally. "Good night, Vanessa." After she left, I leaned against the closed door, processing the unexpected encounter. It had been easier than I'd anticipated, facing her directly, speaking woman to woman without Greg's mediating presence. Not pleasant, Certainly not something I'd want to repeat regularly, but also not the devastating confrontation I'd feared. Another step forward, another piece of the new normal I was constructing day by day. Not the life I'd chosen, but increasingly, a life I could envision navigating. Successfully, the Bluebird Cafe was tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing shop on one of Lakeside Harbor's quainter streets. I arrived 10 minutes early, choosing a table by the window where I could watch for Amanda Lowell's arrival. The cafe was quiet in the mid-afternoon lull, just a few patrons typing on laptops or reading books over cooling cups of coffee. I ordered a cappuccino and tried to calm my nerves. This meeting felt important somehow, though I couldn't articulate why. Perhaps it was simply that it represented the first new connection in my post-Greg life, something unrelated to the shared history and intertwined social circles that had defined me for so long. At precisely 2 o'clock, Amanda Lowell entered the cafe. I recognized her immediately, elegant in a way that spoke of old money and good taste, silver hair styled in a sleek bob, minimal but expensive jewelry complementing her tailored navy pantsuit. She spotted me and approached with a warm smile. "Elaine, thank you for meeting me," she said, extending her hand. "I appreciate you making time, especially given recent events." I shook her hand, noting her firm grip. "I was intrigued by your call," I admitted, "though I'm still not sure what this is about." Amanda ordered a pot of Earl Grey before settling across from me. "I'll get straight to the point," she said once the server had left. "I own Lakeside Interiors. We're a small but established design firm specializing in high-end residential projects." My eyebrows rose in surprise. Lakeside Interiors was well known in local design circles. Exclusive, expensive, with a reputation for impeccable taste and a waiting list of wealthy clients. I'd admired their work in several home tours over the years. "I'm familiar with your firm," I said carefully, "but I'm not sure what that has to do with me." Amanda smiled, her eyes shrewd. "I've been to your home twice now, once for the Harrington and Price holiday party last December, and again for your ceremony last weekend. Both times I was struck by your design sensibility, the way you balanced classic elements with contemporary touches, the attention to detail, the cohesive vision that still allowed for personality and warmth. It's rare to see that level of sophistication in a non-professional." I felt heat rise to my cheeks at the unexpected praise. "Thank you. Interior design was my field before I put my career on hold for family." "I know," Amanda nodded. "Catherine mentioned you have a background in design when I inquired about you. She was quite proud of your talent, though she said you haven't practiced professionally in some time." The tea arrived, and Amanda poured for both of us, giving me a moment to gather my thoughts. "Mrs. Lowell." "Amanda, please." "Amanda," I corrected. "I'm flattered by your interest, but I'm still not clear on why you wanted to meet." She stirred a touch of honey into her tea. "I'm looking for a new designer to join our team. One of our senior designers is retiring at the end of the summer, and we need someone with both technical skills and an innate sense of style to take on some of our more significant clients." She took a sip of her tea, watching me over the rim of her cup. "I think you might be that person." I nearly choked on my cappuccino. "Me? But I haven't worked professionally in over a decade. My degree isn't even completed." "Credentials are important," she interrupted smoothly. "And we can address that. But what can't be taught is taste, vision, and the ability to translate a client's needs into a cohesive design concept. You have those qualities in abundance, based on what I've seen." My mind raced with objections, my outdated skills, my responsibilities to the children, the emotional upheaval of my current situation. Yet beneath the practical concerns, a spark of excitement ignited. This was an opportunity I would never have imagined possible just weeks ago. "I'm in the middle of a divorce," I said bluntly. "My life is complicated right now. Amanda's expression softened slightly. I'm aware of your situation. Impossible not to be, given the circumstances. That doesn't concern me professionally. In fact, if you'll forgive my frankness, it might be exactly the right time for you to reconsider your career path. She reached into her bag and withdrew a slim portfolio, sliding it across the table to me. This is information about our firm, the position, compensation details, and what would be expected of you. Take some time to review it. If you're interested, we can discuss next steps, including how to address the gaps in your formal education. I opened the portfolio, my breath, catching at the images of stunning interiors. Some I recognized from local magazines, others unfamiliar but equally impressive. As I flipped through the pages, I found myself mentally analyzing the designs, noting techniques I recognized and others I would need to learn. This is overwhelming, I admitted, closing the portfolio. In the best possible way, but still overwhelming. Amanda smiled, more warmly this time. I don't expect an answer today. Think about it. Talk to your family. Consider what you want your next chapter to look like. She pulled out a business card and placed it atop the portfolio. Call me when you're ready to discuss further, whether that's tomorrow or next month. As we finished our drinks, the conversation shifted to less consequential topics: local design trends, mutual acquaintances, the revitalization of Lakeside Harbor's waterfront district. Amanda was easy to talk to, her knowledge of design impressive, but never intimidating. By the time we parted, I felt less like I'd been through a job interview, and more like I'd made a connection with a potential mentor. Driving home, my mind whirled with possibilities. The position Amanda had described was part-time to start, potentially expanding to full-time as I gained experience, perfectly suited to my need for flexibility with the children. The compensation, while not matching Greg's income, was substantial enough to supplement the divorce settlement comfortably, and the work itself. Designing beautiful spaces for discerning clients, being part of a respected firm, reclaiming the professional identity I'd set aside years ago. The timing seemed both terrible and perfect. I was in the midst of reinventing my personal life. Why not my professional life as well? Yet the practical obstacles remained significant. I would need to complete at least some formal education to meet the firm's standards. I would need childcare arrangements for when the kids were with me, especially during school holidays. I would need to rebuild my confidence in a field that had evolved significantly since I last practiced professionally. When I arrived home, I found an email from Margaret Chen confirming receipt of the signed divorce papers. All seems in order, she wrote. We'll file immediately. Barring any unforeseen complications, the divorce should be finalized within 90 days. 90 days. Just 3 months until the legal dissolution of my 15-year marriage. The timeline felt simultaneously interminable and alarmingly short. In 3 months, I would officially be a single woman, solely responsible for reconstructing my life, from the ground up. I pulled out the portfolio Amanda had given me, spreading its contents across the kitchen island. The position would begin in September, coinciding almost exactly with the finalization of my divorce. Was it a sign, this alignment of endings and beginnings, or merely coincidence? My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. How did the meeting go? Call me. I smiled, unsurprised that my sister had connected the dots between Amanda's interest and our meeting today. I dialed her number, suddenly eager to share this unexpected development. So? Catherine demanded without preamble when she answered. What did Amanda want? She offered me a job, I replied, still somewhat disbelieving. Or at least, the possibility of a job, at Lakeside Interiors. Catherine's excited squeal made me hold the phone away from my ear. I knew it. When she asked about your design background at the ceremony, I had a feeling. This is perfect, Ellie. It's not that simple, I cautioned, though her enthusiasm was contagious. I'd need to complete some courses, update my skills, figure out childcare. All solvable problems, Catherine interrupted. The question is, do you want it? Did I? The prospect of returning to a field I'd loved, of having an identity beyond wife and mother, of financial independence beyond what the divorce settlement provided, it was tantalizing, frightening, yes, but exhilarating too. I think I do, I admitted quietly. I really think I do. Then make it happen, Catherine said firmly. You've always put everyone else first. Greg, the kids, even me sometimes. It's your turn now, Ellie. Claim this for yourself. Her words resonated deeply, touching something that had been dormant within me for too long. She was right. I had spent years subordinating my needs and desires to those of my family, particularly Greg's career ambitions. It wasn't that I regretted the choices I'd made. I treasured the time I'd had with my children, the home I'd created for us, but somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of my own dreams. I'm going to call the community college tomorrow, I decided. See what courses I need and if I can start this summer. That's my sister, Catherine said proudly. The one who handed her cheating husband divorce papers at their vow renewal. You're stronger than you know, Ellie. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen island for a long time, alternating between examining the Lakeside Interiors portfolio and researching the community college's design program on my laptop. By the time the kids returned from their after-school activities, I had compiled a list of courses I would need, mapped out a potential schedule that would work around their needs, and started drafting an email to Amanda expressing my interest in the position. The next morning, I dropped the children at school and drove directly to the community college. The campus was quiet during summer break, just a few students navigating the tree-lined paths between buildings. I found the design department office and explained my situation to the program director, a petite woman named Dr. Parker, with bright red glasses and an encouraging smile. Returning to the field after raising children? We see that often, she assured me. Your previous coursework should still apply, though design software and building codes have evolved substantially. Let's look at what you'll need to complete the certificate program. We spent an hour reviewing my transcript from years ago, identifying gaps in my education and mapping out a plan. I could take 2 intensive courses over the summer, digital, design tools and contemporary materials and methods, followed by a fuller course load in the fall. If all went well, I could complete the certificate by the following spring, though I could begin working in a trainee capacity even before that. Most firms are looking for a combination of credentials and real-world experience, Dr. Parker explained. If Lakeside Interiors is already interested in you, that's significant. They have a reputation for recognizing talent. I left the meeting with registration paperwork, a reading list to help me prepare for the summer courses, and a growing sense of purpose. This was happening. I was reclaiming not just my independence from Greg, but my professional identity, my creative passion. As I walked to my car, my phone rang, Greg's number flashing on the screen. I considered letting it go to voicemail, still struggling to navigate our new dynamic, but ultimately answered. Ellie. He sounded oddly formal. Do you have a minute? To talk? I'm just leaving the community college, I said, unlocking my car. What's up? The community college? The surprise in his voice was evident. Why are you there? I hesitated, unsure how much of my plans I wanted to share with him, but there was no real reason for secrecy. I'm enrolling in courses to complete my design certificate. I'm pursuing some professional opportunities. Oh, a pause. That's good. That's great, actually. You always had talent in that area. The compliment, unexpected and seemingly sincere, caught me off guard. Thank you. Was there something specific you needed? He cleared his throat. Yes, actually. I wanted to let you know that Vanessa and I have found an apartment. It's in Westridge, about 15 minutes from the house. Close enough for easy transitions with the kids, but not too close to be uncomfortable. Westridge was an upscale neighborhood on the other side of Lakeside Harbor, known for its modern apartment complexes and proximity to the financial district where Greg worked. It made sense practically, but I still felt a twinge of discomfort at the thought of them setting up home together so quickly. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "When are you moving in?" "This weekend. I thought maybe the kids could help see the place, if that's not too awkward." I considered the request. The children would be spending more time in this new apartment, sleeping there during Greg's visitation weekends, perhaps even having their own rooms. It was reasonable for them to be involved in the transition, to feel some ownership of the space. "That makes sense," I conceded. "But Greg?" "Vanessa shouldn't be there for that first visit. The kids need time to adjust to the idea of your new home before adding her to the equation." He was quiet for a moment. "Yeah, you're right. I'll make sure she's out for the afternoon when they come over." "Thanks, Ellie." The conversation ended amicably enough, another small step toward our new normal. As I drove home, I marveled at how quickly life was reconfiguring itself around the broken pieces of my marriage. Greg and Vanessa finding an apartment, me returning to school, potentially starting a new career, the children preparing to divide their time between two households. None of it was what I had envisioned for my family, for my future. Yet there was forward momentum, progress towards something that might eventually feel, if not better, at least stable in its own way. That evening, I enrolled in the 2 summer courses, committing myself to the path forward. The first class would begin in just 2 weeks, barely enough time to arrange childcare and organize my schedule. But the tight timeline was energizing rather than overwhelming, giving me concrete tasks to focus on beyond the emotional landscape of the divorce. The following day, I called Amanda to express my interest in the position at Lakeside Interiors. Her pleased response and immediate suggestion of a follow-up meeting to discuss specific projects boosted my confidence. This wasn't charity or pity. She genuinely valued what I could bring to her firm. "I'm enrolling in courses to update my credentials," I told her. 2 this summer, with more in the fall. "Excellent," she approved. "In the meantime, I'd like you to come in next week to tour our offices and meet the team. We could start you on a project basis initially, allowing you to build your portfolio while you complete your education." The pieces were falling into place with surprising speed. By Friday, I had registered for classes, scheduled a proper interview at Lakeside Interiors, and arranged for Catherine to watch the children during my class times. The momentum felt right, necessary even, a counterbalance to the dissolution of my marriage. Saturday morning, Greg picked up Lily and Ben to help him move into the new apartment. I stood in the driveway watching them pile into his car, a lump in my throat, despite the practical necessity of the arrangement. This was the first tangible evidence of our new separate lives. My husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, establishing a home that wasn't mine, that I would never live in or help decorate or make memories in. "We'll be back by dinner," Greg promised, loading their overnight bags into the trunk. Another first, the children packing to stay elsewhere, a ritual that would become routine in our co-parenting future. "Have fun," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "Call if you need anything." As they drove away, I stood in the driveway a moment longer, allowing myself to feel the ache of this transition. Then I squared my shoulders and went back inside. I had my own plans for the day, reviewing the preparatory materials for my summer courses, organizing my home office into a proper study space, beginning the portfolio Amanda had requested for my interview. The house felt eerily quiet without the children's presence, a preview of what every visitation weekend would feel like going forward. I put on music to fill the silence and spread my design materials across the dining room table, deliberately, choosing this central space rather than hiding away in a spare bedroom. This house was mine now, to use as I needed, to reshape according to my new reality. By mid-afternoon, I was deeply absorbed in my work, sketching design concepts and making notes on material samples. The doorbell's sudden ring jolted me from my concentration. I wasn't expecting visitors, and for a moment I considered ignoring it, reluctant to break my productive flow. But curiosity won out. I opened the door to find Rachel standing on my porch, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bag from our favorite bakery in the other. "Reinforcements," she announced, holding up her offerings. "I figured your first kid-free Saturday might need some company." The thoughtfulness of her gesture brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "You're the best," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Come in. Fair warning, I've turned the dining room into Design Central." Rachel surveyed my workspace with approval as she poured us each a glass of wine. "Look at you, back in your element. How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I admitted, accepting the glass. "Exciting? Overdue." She peered at my sketches, nodding appreciatively. "These are good, Ellie. Really good. I'd forgotten how talented you are." We settled in the living room, wine and pastries between us, and I told her about the potential position at Lakeside Interiors, the courses I was taking, the unexpected way my professional path was opening up in the wake of personal devastation. It's like the universe is saying, "Sorry about your husband being a cheating ass. Here's a dream job to make up for it," Rachel observed, making me laugh despite myself. "I wouldn't go that far," I said. "Nothing's guaranteed. I have to complete. The courses impress Amanda and her team, prove I can handle the work while managing single parenthood. There are 1,000 ways this could go wrong." Rachel studied me over the rim of her wine glass. "But you're going for it anyway. That's the Ellie I haven't seen in years, the one who takes risks, who believes in herself." Her words gave me pause. Had I lost that part of myself in my marriage? Had I become so focused on supporting Greg's ambitions, on creating the perfect home, the perfect family image, that I'd forgotten how to pursue my own dreams? "I think I needed this," I said slowly, the realization forming as I spoke. Not the humiliation or the betrayal, obviously, but the push to reclaim myself, to remember who I am beyond being Greg's wife or Lily and Ben's mother. Rachel reached over to squeeze my hand. "Silver linings in the shitstorm?" I laughed, grateful for her ability to cut through sentiment with humor. "Something like that." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking, laughing, reminiscing about our pre-marriage days when we'd shared an apartment during college, both of us pursuing creative fields with passion and ambition. Rachel had stayed the course, building a successful career as a freelance photographer, while I had veered into marriage and motherhood, setting aside my professional aspirations. There was no judgment in the comparison, just recognition of different paths taken. And now, it seemed, my path was curving back toward my original direction, albeit with 15 years of life experience, both good and painful, shaping my perspective. By the time Rachel left, the sun was setting, bathing my scattered design materials in golden light. I didn't pack them away but left them spread across the dining table, a visible reminder of my commitment to this new direction. Let the children see when they returned. Let them understand that their mother was more than the roles they'd always known her in. It would be good for them, especially Lily, to witness a woman reclaiming her ambitions after focusing on family for so long. The thought of my daughter made me reach for my phone. Greg had sent a few photos throughout the day, the kids exploring their new rooms in the apartment, helping assemble furniture, ordering pizza for dinner. They looked happy, engaged in the adventure of setting up the new space. I texted back, a simple, "Looks fun. See you soon," maintaining the cordial co-parenting tone we were establishing. As I prepared for bed that night, alone in the house that had once contained my entire family, I was surprised to find I didn't feel lonely. Contemplative, yes. Aware of the enormity of the changes underway, certainly. But also strangely at peace, more comfortable in my solitude than I would have predicted. Perhaps it was because the loneliness had already been present in my marriage, masked by the busyness of family life and the illusion of partnership. Or perhaps it was because for the first time in years, I was reconnecting with a part of myself that had nothing to do with being a wife, a role that had ultimately brought more pain than joy. Either way, as I drifted toward sleep, my mind was full not of what I had lost, but of what I might yet create. New designs, new spaces, a new life, built room by room, choice by choice, with my own hands and vision. Greg returned the children, Sunday evening, both of them chattering excitedly about the apartment, the new furniture, the view from the balcony. I listened attentively, asking questions, validating their enthusiasm while carefully monitoring for any signs of distress beneath the excitement. "Dad says we can decorate our rooms however we want," Lily told me, her eyes bright. "I'm thinking maybe a galaxy theme with stars on the ceiling." "That sounds beautiful," I said sincerely. "Maybe we could look at some ideas online together?" Ben tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, Dad's place has a pool and a game room with ping pong." I smiled, squashing the flicker of inadequacy that threatened. Of course, Greg's new luxury apartment complex had amenities our family home couldn't match. "That's fantastic, buddy. You'll have to practice your ping pong skills." Greg lingered in the foyer, clearly uncertain about the new protocol for these transitions. "They were great," he offered. "Helped a lot with setting things up." "I'm glad," I said, meaning it despite the complexity of emotions swirling beneath the surface. "Thanks for the photos." He nodded, his eyes catching on the design materials still spread across the dining table. "Looks like you were productive too." I was. I didn't elaborate, not out of secrecy, but because some things were mine alone now, not subject to his input or approval. He seemed to understand, giving a small nod before turning to the children. "All right, Munchkins. I'll see you Friday for our first official weekend together." After hugs and goodbyes, with promises of video calls before Friday, Greg left, and the three of us stood in the foyer, our reconfigured family unit adjusting to being together again. "Who's hungry?" I asked, steering us toward normalcy. "I was thinking breakfast for dinner, pancakes and scrambled eggs." As the children cheered and raced toward the kitchen, I felt another piece of our new reality lock into place. We were finding our way forward, all of us, step by uncertain step. There would be difficult moments ahead. The first time Vanessa was included in a visitation weekend, the inevitable questions about the baby, the holiday negotiations yet to come. But we would navigate them together, this core family unit that, while changed, remained bound by love. Later, after the children were in bed, I sat at my dining table once more, adding final touches to the portfolio I would bring to my interview at Lakeside Interiors on Tuesday. As I organized images of the design projects I'd completed for friends and family over the years, supplemented by the concept sketches I'd created today, I felt a growing confidence in my abilities. I was rusty, yes. There were gaps in my technical knowledge, tools, and methods I needed to learn, but the fundamental eye for design, the ability to visualize spaces and transform them, that hadn't diminished during my years focused on home and family. If anything, it had deepened, informed by the practical experience of creating a functional, beautiful home on a realistic budget, of understanding how spaces needed to flex and adapt to a family's changing needs. I selected a final image for the portfolio, a before and after of our living room, transformed from the generic beige space the previous owners had left to the warm, layered room it was now, with its carefully curated mix of textures, meaningful objects, and comfortable elegance. It represented everything I believed about design, that spaces should reflect the people who inhabit them, should tell their stories, support their lives, and bring them joy. Whatever happened with Lakeside Interiors, whatever the next chapter held, I would carry that philosophy forward, into new spaces, new projects, new versions of myself yet to be discovered. My interview at Lakeside Interiors exceeded all expectations. The firm occupied the top floor of a renovated historic building downtown, its interior a masterclass in design, clean lines and modern furnishings complementing the original architectural details. The team, 5 designers plus administrative staff, welcomed me warmly, Amanda's endorsement clearly carrying significant weight. "We're particularly interested in your perspective on family-friendly luxury," Amanda explained as she showed me around the studio space. "Many of our clients have young children but don't want to sacrifice sophistication. Your portfolio shows you understand that balance." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. My family life, which had seemed like a professional limitation for so long, was now being framed as an asset. The skills I developed creating a home that was both beautiful and livable for active children were exactly what set me apart from designers with more traditional career paths. By the end of the UI interview, Amanda was discussing specific projects I might start with, contingent on completing my summer courses. "We have a young family in Hillcrest who just purchased a Tudor revival. Gorgeous bones but outdated everything. They need someone who understands how to honor the architectural integrity while creating spaces that work for modern living." I left with a preliminary offer, a part-time position starting in September, with the opportunity to increase my hours as my coursework permitted. The compensation was generous, the flexibility ideal for my co-parenting schedule, and the creative opportunities exactly what I'd dreamed of. It felt almost too perfect, as if the universe were compensating for the collapse of my marriage with unexpected professional doors flying open. That evening, I shared the news with the children over dinner. "I might be starting a new job in the fall," I explained, watching their reactions carefully. "Designing people's homes, like I used to do before you were born." Lily looked up from her pasta, intrigued. "Like on those shows where they surprise people with amazing houses?" I laughed. "Similar, but not on TV. And the clients are involved throughout the process, not surprised at the end." "Will you still be home when we get back from school?" Ben asked, his forehead creasing with concern. "Absolutely," I assured him. "This job is part-time and flexible. I'll still be here for you just like always. The only difference is I'll be working while you're at school, and sometimes meeting with clients in their homes." Lily twirled her fork thoughtfully. "Is this because of the divorce? Because Dad won't be paying for stuff anymore?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. "That's part of it," I admitted, seeing no point in shielding her from financial realities. "But more importantly, it's something I love doing and I'm good at. Something that's just for me, separate from being your mom or Dad's wife." She nodded, processing this. "That makes sense. Ms. Jensen says it's important for women to have their own identities and not just be defined by the men in their lives." "Ours?" I raised an eyebrow, amused by this feminist wisdom from her 7th grade social studies teacher. "Ms. Jensen sounds very smart." "She is," Lily agreed seriously. "She also says divorce can actually be better for kids than having parents who fight all the time or stay together but are unhappy." My heart squeezed with both pain and gratitude. Pain that my daughter was having to process these complex adult issues, gratitude that she had supportive figures like Ms. Jensen helping her make sense of the changes in her family. "Your teacher is right," I said gently. Sometimes people change, or relationships change, and staying together would make everyone miserable. That doesn't mean the love that created a family wasn't real. Ben, quieter throughout this exchange, finally piped up. "But you and Dad weren't fighting all the time. You seemed happy." The observation pierced me. He was right. Greg and I had maintained a veneer of harmony, had gone through the motions of a united partnership, even as Greg was building a separate life with Vanessa. What message had that sent to our children about authenticity, about honesty, in relationships? "Sometimes," I said carefully, People can seem happy on the outside but be unhappy underneath. Dad and I. We stopped talking about important things. We stopped being honest with each other. That's a different kind of problem than fighting, but it's still not healthy. Lily nodded sagely, but Ben still looked troubled. Will we have to meet Dad's new baby when it comes? The question hung in the air, raw and unavoidable. Greg and I hadn't discussed this specifically, how to integrate the new child, the living embodiment of his betrayal, into our children's lives. But I knew there was only one right answer, painful as it was. Yes, sweetheart. The baby will be your half-sibling, just like Aunt Catherine's kids are your cousins. It's okay to have complicated feelings about that. We all do. But the baby didn't do anything wrong, and it's not the baby's fault how it came into the world. Ben seemed to accept this, returning to his dinner with the resilience of a 10-year-old. But Lily watched me with thoughtful eyes, seeing more than I sometimes gave her credit for. Are you okay, Mom? She asked quietly. With Dad having a baby with someone else? I took a deep breath, balancing honesty with age appropriateness. I'm getting there, I said finally. It hurt very much at first, but I'm focusing on building our new life, on exciting things like this job, on making sure you and Ben feel secure. That's what's important now. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand, a gesture so adult, so empathetic, that it nearly brought me to tears. You're doing great, she said, with such earnest conviction that I had to smile. Thank you, sweetheart. So are you. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from Greg. There's a problem, he said without preamble, his voice tense. My parents are coming to town. I suppressed a groan. Greg's parents, Richard and Diane Westbrook, were quintessential old-money East Coast transplants who had never fully warmed to me despite 15 years of marriage. They had always viewed me as slightly beneath their son, the daughter of a high school teacher and a nurse, educated at a state university rather than the Ivy League institutions the Westbrooks favored. They had been polite but distant with the children, sending expensive but impersonal gifts on birthdays and Christmas, visiting briefly once or twice a year. When? I asked, already dreading the complications their presence would add to our delicate new family dynamic. They arrive Friday. Greg hesitated. They don't know about the divorce yet, or about Vanessa and the baby. I nearly dropped the phone. You haven't told them? Greg, it's been almost a month since the ceremony. You're living with Vanessa. The divorce papers are filed. How could you not tell them? He sighed heavily. I've tried. I've called several times, but the conversation never seemed right. You know how they are, how judgmental my father can be. I was waiting to tell them in person. The irony wasn't lost on me. Greg, who had maintained a 2-year deception with his assistant while married to me, was afraid to tell his parents the truth about his life. Part of me wanted to let him flounder, to face his parents' disapproval, without my help. But another part recognized that their visit would impact the children, and their well-being had to remain my priority. What exactly are you asking of me? I said finally, keeping my voice neutral. They're expecting to stay with us, with me, at the house. They don't know I've moved out. He paused. I know it's a lot to ask, but could they stay with you? Just for the weekend? It would give me time to break the news gently, away from the kids. My immediate instinct was to refuse. Having my soon-to-be ex-in-laws stay in my home while their son explained he was divorcing me to marry his pregnant assistant was beyond awkward. Yet I could see the practical wisdom in separating that difficult conversation from the children. They can stay in the guest room, I conceded reluctantly. But Greg, you need to tell them immediately upon arrival. I won't lie to them or pretend things are normal. And you need to take them to dinner that first night, away from the house to have the conversation. Thank you, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. I'll pick them up from the airport and take them straight to dinner. They can come to the house afterward, once they know. Fine. But understand this is the last time I'm managing your parents for you. Part of divorce is dividing family responsibilities as well as assets. After hanging up, I stood in my kitchen, amazed, at the boundary I'd just established. Throughout our marriage, I had been the one to maintain relationships with Greg's family, sending the Christmas cards, organizing visits, remembering birthdays. It had been an unspoken part of our division of labor. He handled finances and yard work. I managed the social and emotional aspects of our family life. That dynamic was changing now, forcibly, but perhaps necessarily. Greg would need to build his own relationship with his parents as a divorced man, just as I would need to manage finances I had previously left largely to him. I spent the next 2 days preparing for the visit, changing sheets in the guest room, stocking the refrigerator, ensuring the house was immaculate, not to impress my former in-laws, but to reinforce my own sense of control over the situation. This was my home now, and I would welcome them on my terms. Friday arrived with unseasonable rain, matching my mood as I attended my first summer design class in the morning. Despite the looming visit from the Westbrooks, I found myself fully engaged in the course material, particularly as we explored new digital design tools that had evolved since my earlier education. The technology was intimidating but exciting, opening possibilities I hadn't imagined for translating creative concepts into workable designs. By the time I returned home to prepare for the evening, I had almost forgotten about the impending awkwardness, until my phone rang with a call from Diane Westbrook herself. "Elaine? We've just arrived at the airport. Gregory was supposed to meet us, but he's not here. We've been waiting nearly an hour." I closed my eyes briefly, swallowing my irritation at Greg's continued evasion of difficult conversations. "I'm sorry to hear that, Diane. Have you tried calling him?" "Of course we have," she said, a hint of her usual impatience creeping into her tone. "He's not answering. Richard is attempting to reach him through his office now." I could picture them perfectly. Diane in one of her impeccable St. John knit suits, Richard in his Brooks Brothers blazer with the gold buttons, both of them radiating disapproval as they stood amid their expensive luggage in the arrivals terminal. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," I said diplomatically. "Why don't you take a taxi to the house and I'll try to reach Greg in the meantime?" After getting their agreement and hanging up, I immediately dialed Greg's number, unsurprised when it went straight to voicemail. "Your parents are at the airport with no one to meet them," I said tersely. "They're taking a taxi here. Whatever game you're playing, it ends now. Call me back immediately." I tried Vanessa next, suspecting she might have more insight into Greg's whereabouts. She answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. "Ellie, is everything okay?" "Not particularly," I replied, keeping my tone civil despite my frustration. "Greg's parents are in town. He was supposed to meet them, and he's nowhere to be found. Do you know where he is?" A pause. "He's here, but he's not in a position to talk right now." Something in her voice raised alarm bells. "What does that mean exactly?" She sighed. "He's had a bit too much to drink. He's been anxious about his parents visiting, about telling them everything. I think it overwhelmed him." The absurdity of the situation struck me with such force that I nearly laughed. Greg, who had orchestrated a 2-year affair while planning a vow renewal ceremony, who had impregnated his assistant while married to me, was now hiding in a drunken stupor rather than face his parents with the truth. "His parents are coming to my house," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. I agreed to let them stay here so he could break the news gently over dinner. Now I'm left hosting them with no explanation from their son. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said, sounding genuinely distressed. "I tried to get him to call them last week to prepare them before the visit, but he kept putting it off. I'll try to get him sobered up, get him to call them." "Don't bother," I said flatly. "I'll handle it." But Vanessa, this is the last time. I'm not covering for him anymore. I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. For years, I had smoothed things over for Greg, with his parents, with friends, with the children when he missed events due to work. I had been the buffer between him and the emotional complexities of life, managing discomfort so he didn't have to face it. That role was over now, not just because we were divorcing, but because I finally saw it for what it was, a disservice to him and a burden on me. Greg was a grown man, soon to be a father of 3. It was time he learned to handle difficult conversations himself. The taxi from the airport arrived just as I finished setting out coffee and pastries in the living room. I greeted Richard and Diane with the polite warmth I had always maintained, helping with their luggage, offering refreshments, apologizing for Greg's absence without making excuses for him. Traffic can be unpredictable from downtown, I said, vaguely, buying time while I decided how to handle the situation. I'm sure he'll be along soon. Diane glanced around the living room, her gaze lingering on the design materials still spread across my dining table. You seem to be in the midst of some project, she observed, the hint of disapproval in her voice familiar and grating. I'm completing a design certificate, I said smoothly, refusing to apologize for my pursuits. I've been offered a position at Lakeside Interiors, contingent on updating my credentials. Richard's eyebrows rose slightly. Are you planning to work full-time? What about the children? The question, with its implied criticism, might have flustered me in the past. Now I simply smiled. The position is part-time, with flexible hours that work well with the children's schedule. They're quite excited about it, actually. Before either Westbrook could respond, my phone rang, Greg's number at last. Excuse me, I said, stepping into the kitchen to take the call. Are they there? Greg asked without greeting, his voice tight. Yes, they arrived about 15 minutes ago. I understand from Vanessa that you're indisposed. He exhaled heavily. I'm sorry, Ellie. I know I promised to handle this. I couldn't face them. Well, they're in my living room now, expecting explanations. What would you like me to tell them? A long silence. Would you mind just saying I had a work emergency? I'll come by tomorrow, I promise. I'll tell them everything then. I closed my eyes, torn between anger at his continued evasion and a strange sympathy for his obvious distress. Greg had spent his life trying to meet his parents' expectations, to be the successful son they demanded. I understood, better than most, the weight of their judgment. Fine, I said finally. One more night. But tomorrow, Greg. No more delays. Returning to the living room, I found Richard and Diane in quiet conversation, their heads bent together in that conspiratorial way that had always made me feel like an outsider in their presence. That was Greg, I announced. He's been held up with a client emergency and sends his apologies. He'll join us for breakfast tomorrow. Diane frowned slightly. He could have called us directly. We've been quite worried. Yes, he should have, I agreed, no longer interested in making excuses for him. Now, can I show you to your room? You must be tired after your flight. As I helped them settle into the guest room, answering their polite questions about the children and deflecting inquiries about Greg, I felt a curious detachment from the anxiety that had always accompanied their visits. Their opinion of me, of my home, of my parenting, it simply didn't matter anymore. I didn't need their approval or understanding. They were simply people connected to my children, deserving basic courtesy, but no longer holding any power over my sense of self-worth. When the children returned from their after-school activities, their surprise at finding their grandparents was genuine, but not entirely enthusiastic. The Westbrooks had never been warm grandparents, more likely to ask about grades and extracurricular achievements than to engage in play or genuine conversation. Grandma, Grandpa, Ben offered dutifully, accepting their stiff hugs. "Did you bring us anything?" "Benjamin," I admonished gently, though the materialistic nature of their relationship had been established by the Westbrooks themselves, who rarely visited without expensive gifts. "As a matter of fact, we did," Richard said, producing 2 small gift bags from his luggage. "A watch for you, Ben, a proper timepiece for a young man, and for Lily, a tennis bracelet. Your mother can keep it safe until you're older." The gifts were typically Westbrook, expensive, adult-oriented items that reflected what they thought the children should want rather than what might bring them joy. Ben examined his watch with polite interest, while Lily thanked them graciously for the bracelet, her eyes meeting mine in shared understanding of the gesture's hollowness. Dinner was a stilted affair, the children answering their grandparents' questions about school and activities with increasing brevity as the meal progressed. I maintained the conversation with practiced ease, steering topics away from Greg's absence or any hint of the dramatic changes in our family structure. By the time dessert was served, even Diane seemed to have exhausted her supply of polite inquiries, lapsing into comments about friends and acquaintances the children and I had never met. After the children were in bed, I joined the Westbrooks for a nightcap in the living room, bracing myself for the more direct questions they had likely been restraining in the children's presence. "Elaine," Diane began, swirling her brandy, "I can't help but notice things seem different. The house, your new career interest, Gregory's unexplained absence." I met her gaze steadily. "Yes, things are different, but I think it's best if Greg explains when he joins us tomorrow." Richard frowned. "If there's something we should know about, I'd prefer to hear it directly. We're family, after all." The statement, delivered with his typical authoritative tone, sparked a flicker of irritation within me. Throughout my marriage, the Westbrooks had maintained a careful distance, never fully accepting me into their concept of family. Now, when it suited their need for information, they invoked the connection. "With all due respect, Richard, this is between Greg and me first, then between us and our children, and only then between us and extended family. I promised Greg the opportunity to speak with you himself, and I intend to honor that promise." Diane's eyebrows rose at my unusually direct response, but she nodded stiffly. "Very well. We'll wait to hear from Gregory in the morning." The conversation shifted to safer topics, their travel plans, mutual acquaintances, the weather, until they excused themselves to retire for the evening. I remained in the living room after they'd gone upstairs, sipping my wine and contemplating the bizarre situation I found myself in. Hosting my soon-to-be ex-in-laws while their son hid from the consequences of his actions with his pregnant girlfriend. If someone had described this scenario to me a year ago, I would have dismissed it as an outlandish plot from a daytime soap opera. Yet here I was, living it, and somehow managing to navigate it with a composure I wouldn't have believed myself capable of. My phone buzzed with a text from Greg. "I'll be there for breakfast, 8:30. Thank you for today. I know I don't deserve your help." I didn't respond, unsure what to say. He was right. He didn't deserve my help. Yet I had provided it anyway, not for his sake, but for the sake of minimizing drama that might affect the children. It was a distinction. Worth noting, a clarification of my priorities moving forward. The morning dawned bright and clear, the rain of the previous day giving way to summer sunshine. I rose early, preparing a substantial breakfast, coffee, fruit, pastries from the local bakery, and a frittata keeping warm in the oven. The Westbrooks were early risers, and I wanted the house to feel welcoming, the scene set for whatever uncomfortable revelations the day would bring. Diane appeared first, impeccably dressed in linen slacks and a silk blouse even at this early hour. "You've gone to considerable trouble," she observed, helping herself to coffee. "Is there an occasion I'm unaware of?" "Just hospitality," I replied lightly, arranging napkins on the breakfast table. "The children will be up soon. They always wake early on Saturdays." As if on cue, Ben thundered down the stairs in his pajamas, stopping short when he saw his grandmother. "Oh, morning, Grandma." Diane smiled thinly. "Good morning, Benjamin. Perhaps you should dress before breakfast?" Ben looked to me, clearly, unwilling to change his weekend routine for his grandmother's sensibilities. I winked at him. "Pajamas are fine for Saturday breakfast, honey. It's a house rule." He grinned, helping himself to a pastry with deliberate casualness. Lily appeared moments later, followed by Richard, and soon all 5 of us were seated around the table, the conversation flowing more easily in the morning light than it had at dinner. At precisely 8:30, the doorbell rang. The children perked, up immediately. "That's probably Dad," Lily said, starting to rise. "I'll get it." I placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Let me, sweetheart." Something in my tone must have conveyed the seriousness of the moment, as she sat back down without protest. I opened the door to find Greg standing on the porch, looking somewhat haggard, but sober and determined. "Thank you for this," he said, quietly. "I know it's not fair to ask." "You're right, it's not," I replied, keeping my voice low. "But it's the last time, Greg. After today, you manage your own relationship with your parents." He nodded, following me into the dining room, where the Westbrooks and children were finishing breakfast. The scene was deceptively normal. Grandparents and grandchildren sharing a meal, the sunlight streaming through windows, the scent of coffee and baked goods filling the air. It belied the tension humming beneath the surface, the imminent shattering of this facade of family unity. "There you are, Gregory," Diane said, her voice holding the slightest edge. "We were beginning to think you'd forgotten about us entirely." Greg forced a smile, kissing his mother's cheek and shaking his father's hand. "Sorry about yesterday. Client emergency. You know how it is." Richard nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "Indeed, though most emergencies still allow for a phone call to one's parents." The subtle rebuke hung in the air, a preview of the stronger disapproval yet to come. Greg glanced at me, then at the children, clearly uncertain how to proceed. I stepped in, addressing Lily and Ben. "How about you two go get dressed? Maybe you could show Grandma and Grandpa that new park later?" Lily, perceptive as always, looked between the adults with narrowed eyes. "Is something going on?" "Your father needs to speak with your grandparents," I said honestly. "Adult stuff. We'll fill you in after, promise." With reluctance, they left the table, their footsteps on the stairs echoing in the suddenly quiet house. As soon as they were out of earshot, Diane turned to Greg, her posture stiffening. "All right, Gregory, what exactly is happening here?" Elaine has been uncharacteristically evasive, the children seem on edge, and you were conspicuously absent yesterday. I think we deserve an explanation." Greg took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Mom, Dad, I have something difficult to tell you. Elaine and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of the children moving around upstairs. Richard's face remained impassive, but Diane's eyes widened, darting between Greg and me as if seeking confirmation that this was some kind of misunderstanding. "Divorced?" she repeated finally. "But that's absurd. You were renewing your vows just last month. We received the invitation." Greg winced, avoiding my gaze. "The vow renewal didn't happen. It was canceled." "Canceled?" Richard's voice held a dangerous calm. "Why exactly?" Here it was, the moment of truth. I watched Greg struggle, his discomfort almost palpable as he searched for words that wouldn't come. "Because Greg has been having an affair with his assistant for 2 years, I said quietly, stepping in despite my resolution to let him handle this. "She's pregnant. They're living together now." The blunt statement landed like a physical blow. Diane gasped, her hand flying to her throat in a gesture so theatrically shocked it would have been comical under different circumstances. Richard's face darkened, his jaw clenching visibly. "Is this true?" he demanded, his voice tight with controlled anger. Greg nodded miserably. "Yes, I've been seeing Vanessa. She's expecting our child in December." "Have you lost your mind?" Richard's composure cracked, his voice rising. "Throwing away a 15-year marriage, a respected position at the firm, your family's stability? For what? Some young woman who trapped you with a pregnancy?" "It wasn't like that," Greg protested weakly. "Vanessa didn't trap me. We fell in love." Diane made a sound of disgust. "Love? You destroy your family for some infatuation and call it love? I raised you better than this, Gregory." The conversation deteriorated from there, accusations and recriminations flowing freely. I sat in silence, oddly detached from the emotional maelstrom swirling around me. This wasn't my drama anymore. These weren't my demons to exercise or justifications to make. After nearly 20 minutes of increasingly heated exchange, I stood up. "I think this conversation needs to continue elsewhere," I said firmly. "The children are upstairs and can probably hear raised voices. I suggest you move to Greg's apartment, where you can discuss this privately." Richard looked startled, as if he'd forgotten my presence entirely. "Yes, of course. This is hardly appropriate conversation for a family breakfast table." The irony of his statement, implying we were still a proper family adhering to social niceties despite the very conversation proving otherwise, was almost too much. But I merely nodded, beginning to clear the breakfast dishes as if this were any normal Saturday. Greg rose, his face drawn. "I'll get my car. We can go to my place and talk further." As the Westbrooks gathered their belongings, preparing to depart with their son, Diane approached me in the kitchen where I was loading the dishwasher. "Elaine," she began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "I want you to know we don't condone Gregory's behavior. This is not how we raised him to conduct himself." I straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "Thank you, Diane. But this isn't about how you raised him. It's about the choices he made as an adult and the consequences of those choices for all of us, especially the children." She nodded stiffly. "Of course, the children. Will you allow us to continue seeing them?" The question surprised me with its vulnerability, its acknowledgement that access to Lily and Ben was now something I controlled, not something they could take for granted. "They're your grandchildren," I said simply. "That hasn't changed. As long as you respect our new family structure and don't disparage Greg or Vanessa in front of them, regardless of your personal feelings, you'll always be welcome in their lives." Relief crossed her face. "Thank you. That's very generous under the circumstances." As they left with Greg, the house fell quiet once more. The children remained upstairs, likely sensing the tension and giving the adults space to resolve it. I finished cleaning the kitchen, my mind strangely calm despite the emotional scene that had just unfolded. Another milestone passed, another difficult conversation navigated, another piece of the old life dismantled to make way for the new. The Westbrooks' visit, awkward and painful as it had been, represented one more severed tie to my life as Mrs. Gregory Westbrook. One more step toward whatever awaited me on the other side of this transition. And for the first time, I found myself looking forward to that unknown future with more curiosity than fear. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, I stood in the courtroom as the judge finalized our divorce. Greg stood beside his attorney across the aisle, his expression solemn but relieved. The proceedings were brief, anticlimactic after the months of emotional turbulence. Just a few signatures, a few formal questions, and 15 years of marriage were legally dissolved. "Congratulations, Ms. Westbrook," my attorney said as we exited the courtroom. "Or will you be returning to your maiden name?" "I haven't decided yet. I admitted. The children are used to sharing my last name, and professionally, I've started establishing myself as a Lane Westbrook designer. She nodded, understanding. There's no rush. You can always change it later if you decide to. Greg approached as my attorney excused herself, giving us privacy. His suit hung slightly loose on his frame. He'd lost weight over the past months, the stress of our separation and his parents' ongoing disapproval taking its toll. So that's it, he said quietly. Officially over. Yes. I felt no triumph. In the moment, no vindication, just a profound sense of closure. How are you doing? He shrugged. Managing. The firm's been challenging. Richard Davies took his business elsewhere after the news broke. A few others followed. I nodded, unsurprised. In investment banking, personal scandal could have professional repercussions, especially with more conservative clients. And your parents? Still barely speaking to me, he admitted. They came around for dinner last week, but they were cold. To Vanessa. It'll take time. We stood awkwardly in the courthouse hallway, former partners now connected only by our children and shared history. There was nothing left to say, no loose ends to tie up. The divorce agreement covered everything: finances, custody arrangements, the house, even holiday schedules. I should go, I said finally. I have a client meeting at 11. Of course. He hesitated, then extended his hand. Good luck, Ellie. With everything. I shook his hand briefly, the formality of the gesture underscoring how far we had traveled from the intimate partnership we once shared. You too, Greg. Outside, autumn sunshine bathed the courthouse steps in golden light. I paused, breathing deeply, allowing myself to fully absorb the moment. I was divorced. Single. Solely responsible for my own happiness and direction for the first time in 15 years. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating, like standing at the edge of an unfamiliar landscape, vast, uncharted, full of both potential pitfalls and unexpected beauty. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Client meeting pushed to 11:30. Take your time. I smiled, grateful for her understanding. Amanda had become not just an employer, but a mentor since I'd joined Lakeside Interiors 2 months earlier. She had guided me through the steep learning curve of professional design, offering patience when I stumbled with new software, praise when I contributed valuable insights, and unvarnished criticism when my work didn't meet her standards. Under her tutelage, I was flourishing, my confidence growing with each successful project. The Tudor revival in Hillcrest had been completed last week, the clients so delighted with the transformation that they'd already referred 2 friends to the firm. My second project, a waterfront condo for a recently divorced executive, was in the early stages, the client responding enthusiastically to my concept boards. I walked to my car, a new-to-me SUV purchased with part of the divorce settlement. The reliable family vehicle was mine now, as was the house, maintained with the alimony and child support Greg provided faithfully each month. Financial security had been one of my primary concerns when planning the divorce, and Greg, whether from guilt or genuine concern for the children's stability, had agreed to generous terms. The drive to Lakeside Interiors took me through downtown, past the gleaming office tower where Greg worked. I no longer felt a pang seeing it, no longer defined myself in relation to his world or success. My identity was my own now, professional, personal, complete in itself, rather than as half of a couple. At the office, I found Amanda reviewing fabric samples for an upcoming project. How did it go? She asked, looking up as I entered. Quick and painless, I replied, setting down my bag. 15 years of marriage dissolved in under 15 minutes. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. Amanda had been divorced herself. Years ago, one of the many fragments of her life story she'd shared as our working relationship deepened into friendship. And how do you feel? I considered the question, settling into the chair across from her desk. Lighter, I said finally. Like I've set down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it was there. That's a good sign, she approved. Now, are you up for this client meeting? We can reschedule if you need time. I'm ready, I assured her, grateful for her concern, but eager to move forward with the day, with my new normal. Who are we meeting? Again? James Harrison. Purchased a mid-century modern in Pine Hills that needs complete renovation. Recently relocated from Chicago for a position at Memorial Hospital. Trauma surgeon, divorced, 2 teenage children who visit on holidays. And summers. I nodded, mentally cataloging the information that would inform our design approach. A busy professional who needed a sanctuary. A parent who required spaces for visiting children. Someone starting fresh in a new city, a new home, a new chapter. Not unlike myself. The meeting went exceptionally well. Dr. Harrison was articulate about his needs and preferences, responsive to our suggestions, and clearly impressed with the portfolio of work I presented. When he specifically requested me as the lead designer for his project, pride surged through me. Not the reflected pride of being Mrs. Gregory Westbrook, but the earned satisfaction of professional recognition. After the client departed, Amanda squeezed my shoulder. He liked you. This could be a significant project. The budget he outlined gives us considerable creative freedom. I have so many ideas already, I admitted, my mind racing with possibilities for transforming the dated mid-century home into a contemporary space that honored its architectural roots while meeting the needs of its new owner. Start sketching, she encouraged. Initial concept boards by Friday? I nodded, already mentally arranging my schedule to accommodate the new project while balancing my ongoing work, classes, and the children's needs. It was a complex juggling act, but one I was mastering day by day, finding rhythms and routines that worked for our reconfigured family. That evening, as I prepared dinner for Lily and Ben, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered, cautiously, still wary of unsolicited calls in the wake of the divorce. Elaine Westbrook? A woman's voice inquired. Yes, speaking. This is Meredith Collins from Pine Hill Academy. I'm calling regarding your application to our interior design competition. My heart skipped. 3 weeks ago, at Amanda's urging, I had submitted a design concept to a prestigious competition sponsored by Pine Hill Academy, an exclusive art school in the city. The winning design would be implemented in the school's new student center, and the designer would receive a substantial cash prize, along with significant industry recognition. Yes, of course, I managed, my voice steady despite the sudden flutter of nerves. Thank you for calling. I'm pleased to inform you that your design has been selected as one of 3 finalists, Meredith continued. The committee was particularly impressed with your innovative approach to creating collaborative spaces for students. Joy surged through me, so pure and unexpected that I had to grip the kitchen counter for support. That's wonderful. News. Thank you. She outlined the next steps, a presentation to the selection committee in 2 weeks, more detailed renderings of specific elements, preparation for potential questions about materials and implementation. I took notes mechanically, still processing the magnitude of this recognition. When I hung up, I stood motionless in the kitchen, overcome with emotion. 6 months ago, I had been Elaine Westbrook, wife and mother, planning a vow renewal ceremony to celebrate 15 years of what I believed was a solid marriage. Now I was Elaine Westbrook, divorced mother of 2, emerging interior designer, finalist in a prestigious industry competition. The transformation was so profound, so unexpected, that it nearly took my breath away. Mom, are you okay? Lily's voice broke through my reverie. She stood in the kitchen doorway, her expression concerned. I'm more than okay, I told her, my voice thick with emotion. I just found out I'm a finalist in that design competition I told you about. The one for Pine Hill Academy." Her face lit up with genuine pride. "That's amazing. I knew you'd make it. Your design was so cool with those hanging study pods and the interactive walls." Her enthusiasm, her complete confidence in my abilities, touched me deeply. Throughout the turmoil of the past months, Lily had been my most steadfast supporter, adapting to our new reality with resilience and grace. At 13, she was developing her own creative interests, recently joining the school's art club and showing remarkable talent in painting. "Thank you, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. "That means a lot to me." The moment was interrupted by the sound of the front door opening, Ben returning from soccer practice with our neighbor and his carpool buddy. He burst into the kitchen, full of energy and news about his team's upcoming tournament. As I listened to him chatter while setting the table for dinner, I was struck by how seamlessly we had adapted to our new normal. The children moved between their father's apartment and our home with minimal disruption, maintaining their school activities, friendships, and overall stability, despite the significant changes in their family structure. There had been difficult moments, of course. Ben had gone through a phase of acting out at school shortly after the divorce was filed. Lily had experienced tension with friends whose parents had taken sides in the community gossip that inevitably followed our public split. But with therapy, open communication, and consistent co-parenting from Greg and me, they were thriving, once again. After dinner and homework, with the children settled in their rooms for the evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the back porch. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves. I wrapped a cardigan around my shoulders and sank into one of the Adirondack chairs, gazing up at the star-scattered sky. 6 months ago, I had stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, listening to my husband and his assistant discuss their unborn child. In that devastating moment, I had felt as if my entire world was collapsing, as if everything I had built and believed in was crumbling beneath my feet. I couldn't have imagined then that destruction would make way for creation. That ending my marriage would begin a journey back to myself. That the most painful betrayal I had ever experienced would ultimately lead to greater authenticity, deeper connections, and unexpected joy. The divorce, finalized that morning, was not an ending but a continuation. Another step on a path I was now creating deliberately, mindfully, true to my own values and vision. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "Heard about the competition? Celebration drinks tomorrow? So proud of you." I smiled, texting back my agreement. The web of support I had discovered and nurtured over these months, Rachel's unwavering friendship, Catherine's fierce loyalty, Amanda's professional mentorship, even unexpected allies, like Vanessa, who had proven genuinely committed to maintaining a healthy dynamic for the children's sake, had sustained me through the darkest moments. And now, as I sat under the stars, cradling possibilities instead of regrets, I realized that what had seemed like the end of everything had actually been a beginning. Not the beginning I would have chosen, but perhaps the one I needed. A catalyst for growth, for courage, for reclaiming parts of myself that had been slowly submerged during 15 years of marriage. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still challenges ahead: co-parenting complexities, professional hurdles, the eventual integration of Greg and Vanessa's baby into our extended family circle. But for the first time, I faced these challenges, not as obstacles to happiness, but as natural elements of a rich, evolving life. As I finished my wine and prepared to go inside, my phone buzzed once more. A text from an unfamiliar number. "Congratulations on making finals. Your design concept was brilliant. Perhaps we could discuss it over coffee sometime?" James Harrison, the mid-century modern client. I stared at the message, detecting the subtle shift from professional inquiry to personal invitation. 6 months ago, I might have ignored it, too wounded from betrayal to consider opening myself to new possibilities. 3 months ago, I might have panicked, unready to navigate romantic interest as a newly single woman. But tonight, on this day of endings and beginnings, I found myself smiling as I typed a simple response. I'd like that. Next week after the presentation boards are complete? His reply came quickly. Perfect. Looking forward to it. I slipped my phone into my pocket and went inside, locking the door behind me, securing my home, the sanctuary I had created for myself and my children. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new moments of both struggle and joy. But tonight, I was at peace with where I stood and curious about what lay ahead. From the ashes of a marriage that ended in betrayal, something new was emerging, not despite the pain, but because of it. Because sometimes it takes the complete collapse of the life you thought you wanted to reveal the life that's been waiting for you all along. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.